Hello YouTubers, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the second half of my Attack on Titan reviews, which will be covering the multiple parts of Season 4 / the final season of the show, which has a very distinct and different feel from the first 3 seasons. That is why I split the 2 reviews up, and I would wager to say aims higher and is more ambitious than the first 3 seasons. And in my initial concept for this review, I was going to separate out Season 4 Parts 1 and 2 from the 2-part finale, because I had read the manga and I know the criticisms about the ending and had a fear that the anime ending was going to undercut the show and what came before it. But I was very pleased to realize that the anime made a couple of light tweaks to the dialogue, basically make the finale feel like it added to what came before it instead of taking away from what came before it. So instead of separating them out, I'm going to be including the finale with this review. So this is Season 4 in its entirety. And for the unaffiliated, how these reviews work is I will be reviewing 15 different narrative tenets based off an architectural structure, and then I will be giving a color ranking to each one of those tenets, and then averaging out all those colors to get an overall review of the series. For those who may have just joined from one of my previous videos, I have cut out the memory section of this review to make it less overlong. And with that, let's begin. Number 1, levels of scale. Purple, just like seasons 1 through 3. And it is purple, but in a different way, as we don't really deal with the 3 concentric walls much anymore. Instead, we increase up to the scale of the world, the scale of the Titans, the scale of the narrative. We are now finally at the spot where we have the truth to what was going on in the first 3 seasons, now allowing us to explore all that goes on that level, but also getting to mine out mysteries on even higher levels, like the nature of the paths. But then also we link this scale with character. So we think about it, we have Eren's plan and Zeke's plan as the 2 metaphorical highest levels of narrative scale. And then we have other characters circling around these levels as the narrative continues while trying to piece together the motivations of these scales. And it's not as tight or de facto clean as the first 3, but in this set, I'd say it's arguably more character-based and thus arguably more realistic. So for almost different reasons, it's also a purple, just like 1 through 3. Strong centers, and here we go again. I gotta do it. Rainbow. And yeah, because the strong center, I'm saying it's character-based, it's Eren. And you don't know this at first, as we spend much of Season 4 watching characters duel for the strong center, represented literally by the coordinate and also by founder Ymir, in terms of should we let Zeke and Eren come together or not, which one is the right center for the bulk of the runtime, only for Eren to win out and prove that yes, he is the center and has always been the center. Only for us to realize that, sure, we just cheered for Eren winning and claiming that strong center, but by him winning this strong center, he's now going to use that notion to commit the highest mass atrocity that we can think of, even though we completely understand why he does it. But we realize that the strong center that we've been rooting for all along is pure heart. And I think there's no better representation of this than how Season 4 Part 2 ends, with Eren returning to the foreground of the story in horrific fashion and destroying Marley's military with absolute ease. And we see what Eren has become and flashback to his words from when he was a child, the very beginning of the story, and both his role in the story and his motivations are brutally clear, whether we like it or not. And then the finale, we then have all of his friends and all the other characters circling around his center. And as this goes on, Armin kind of becomes this hidden center that acts as an opposing thought view to Eren that just gradually grows. And then the scene that in the past between Eren and Armin, which in the manga was the scene that I felt undercut this notion of the strong center, it then adds to it, with Armin and Eren embracing. Instead of Armin saying, "Oh, thank you for committing genocide," then taking away these bits of Eren's motivations, he adds Eren's motivation to himself. So both of these would-be thought processes of the strong center tie themselves together. Do we talk it through, or do we become the monster and destroy all who stand in our way? They tie each other together, basically linking each other through eternity. And that makes us think that, is that all humanity is? And I thought it was very clever that the refrain from the Irwin Charge theme, when Eren shows you the path's carnage, and 80% of humanity is dead, hinting to you, this is what happens if you make yourself the monster. And if that isn't Rainbow, I don't know what else is. So take a bow, Attack on Titan Season 4, Strong Center, Rainbow. Boundaries is blue. And it's because it's less about the boundaries between the spaces now and more about the boundaries between us. And there's this parallel between the boundaries between Eren's rage and the world disappearing, just as the boundaries between us can be built. And I'm going to be giving out purples and higher for this season pretty regularly, so given that it's somewhat hard to spot these boundaries, then maybe you can argue that some of the boundaries of how the story is told in the first half are a little haphazard. I can justify going blue, but still, it's good stuff that happening here in this Tenet 2. Alternating repetition is blue, and that is higher than what I gave out for 1 through 3, because we set up the Marley squad early on, and then we start alternating between them and our heroes. We start alternating between the past and the present, and we slowly crystallize that what is being paired and alternated with is Eren and company versus Marley. But wait, is it Rebels versus Eren and Zeke? Is it Eren versus Zeke? And it's all alternating between these different factions before the horrible truth is revealed that after all these different twisting, alternating repetitions, crystallizing and crossing across each other, we just have to sit that it's Eren versus the world. And it's not perfect. The Marley squad kind of disappears from the show a bit midway. And then the last bit of Season 4 Part 2, there's no Eren, really, in those episodes. So the alternating aspects are there, but in some cases, it's either a too muchness thing, and others it's super slow pace, focusing on one thing over here. So given how high I'm going to be going with this season, blue is okay here. And remember, blue is very, very good. And the Eren versus his friends thing is pushed fully to its conclusion in the in the finale. And I'd also wager to say that by the finale, the rumbling is an extension of Eren. So even though he isn't on screen that much, we still feel his presence. But I'm going to hold off giving props for that until Echoes. So for right now, blue. Positive space. Purple. And I'm almost there towards rainbow in this, with the paths representing the, quote, true negative space that Eren and Zeke have to traverse. That by conquering this and yourself and the internal of your thoughts, that spiritual purgatory, what have you, and that means you get the power of purely horrific, literal positive space, as the Colossals take up more space, literally, than anything else. Just as the central dueling philosophies of this season are Eren's, which is use pure positive space to destroy everyone else, and Zeke's, which is use pure negative space. Take something away from us. We destroy ourselves in order to save the world. And then this trickles up across their personalities, trickles down to the characters circling them, and I like how it plays with that. And again, mentioned this in Strong Center, by the finale, Armin has grown into this kind of middle center space in between Zeke and Eren. It's not a surprise that he then shares path scenes with both of them in the finale. And by this point, Armin almost is representing balance between the two. And then he helps both of these other representations of how you use space to try to find towards that. And because he's grown into it, it doesn't feel inauthentic that Armin represents this. And it works. It works. And purple it is. Good shape. Also purple. And we have this good shape of Eren, literally. First he's human Eren, and then he has the shape of his Titan form that we know, and then he becomes the founding rumbling Titan that each represents different things about his personality. And then we have the various Titan shifters, which is in terms of being literal. But mainly, in Season 4, it's the good shape of A, characters we thought were the villains, and the Marleyans and the Warriors, gradually shifting into feeling like we should be rooting for them, to B, showing Gabby, Falco, and their group, to then shift our perception about war at large and the sins of the heroes that we had been following for 3 seasons and what they are doing. C, the fact that our perceptions of Zeke and Grisha flip back and forth multiple times, and yet it doesn't feel fake. And of course D, that we aren't sure what to make of Eren's shape, and are forced to just follow his actions, as the other characters are doing, to try to make sense of what kind of, quote, shape he is going to end up making. And although we get a couple of moments to cheer for him when he beats Zeke, that makes us feel like we're rooting for our old Eren because I was born into this world. Let's go. No, he's not. War and experience have twisted him towards one goal, and then even after all that, the season uses flashback to allow us to piece the reasoning behind that shape together. And I mentioned in Strong Center, again, this is something that I thought the manga undercut, because the manga tries to justify his genocide and his reasoning for doing it. The manga first says, no, he just wants to destroy the world because he was disappointed, and then just cuts that thought's head off and says, no, he was just doing it for all his friends. But in the anime, it ties them together. In the anime, it suggests, no, he was doing it for his friends, but he also really wanted to do it because of how disappointed he was. And if anything, that means it expands on Eren's good shape, and I'd wager to say that then allows for a good shape of what, unfortunately, humanity is. So, purple. Yeah. And for local symmetries, and we're breaking this out again, rainbow. Because, yeah, this season really is all about the symmetries between us, at the local level at the very least. And there are so many of them. Gabby is linked to symmetry to young Eren. Armin continually compared to what Erwin might have done. It being explored fully to allow us to symmetrically link the experience of Reiner, Annie, and Bertolt to Eren, Mikasa, and Armin. The episode Two Brothers that links the symmetries of Falco and Colt, Porco and Marcel, and Eren and Zeke all together. The fact that this trope is inverted, with Zeke believing that he and Eren are local symmetries, when in fact they very much are not. The fact that the Alliance spends an entire episode discussing their local symmetries as a way to at least try to come together. My personal favorite of Season 4, Part 2, which is witnessing Magath and Shadis, the two leaders on opposite sides, coming together in respect, dignity, and hope for their students one last time, all while managing the central theme that diametric opposites, Marley and Eldia, are more alike than we are apart, and if we fail to see that, there are horrific consequences. I can't truly think of a show that manages so many moving parts this well when it comes to this tenet, all while tying all of them back together to the central theme. Even when a just side character like the Marleyan general in the finale discusses our symmetries with the finale in mind, like there's even more that it starts throwing at you and feels earned. Like Annie and Armin acts as their romantic symmetry, mirroring Eren and Mikasa, which can never be, and Annie and Armin can be. The symmetry of all the Titan shifters joining the fray, and then again when Armin chooses to say he's complicit as a symmetry to Eren, it basically says that even our darkest elements are unfortunately tied together too. So, yeah, I'm doing it. Rainbow. And speaking of rainbow, let's throw another one out there for Deep Interlock. Because the interesting thing about this season is that the first 3 seasons were us trying to figure out what was actually going on at levels above our characters. This season doesn't fully do that because now we know at least everything that we needed to know from those 3 seasons. So the season does 3 things that on paper shouldn't work, and indeed does feel jarring on first viewing. But then you realize it does work. A, it time skips forward 4 years, thereby jump-starting our desire to piece together what exactly has happened over these 4 years, and then mines out that information without giving it all away at once. B, it shifts perspective to the Marleyans, which forces us to wonder how exactly our heroes fit into the grand scheme of things, even though by doing this, the season, sneakily, is making us empathetic to our would-be villains. C, most of all, even after the narrative shifts back around to focusing on Eldia and answers at least some of our questions of the past 4 years, it refuses to let us know exactly what Eren is thinking. And this feels diegetic and genuine because our characters do not know exactly what he is thinking either. So this feeling of this character that we think we know, why is he acting that way, feels real. And then, whether it be the greater worldwide backstory, Zeke's plan, or pieces set up long before in the first 3 seasons, the narrative begins to knock down the dominoes one by one. I personally find the 5-episode stretch that begins Season 4, Part 2 some of the best uses of Deep Interlock payoff, and any piece of media ever. And then even as the story shifts more to a slower pace, there are still more payoffs, Annie's reappearance, old characters that show up again, Shadis of course, but also Hitch, while still playing on our desire to see the deep interlock pieces of Eren's decision play out. And then the season finally gives that, both in the finale of Part 2 and the finale at large, which is all payoffs. The Irwin Scouts afterlife scene with Hanji, the payoff of Zeke, Armin in the paths, and then Zeke's death, Armin finally going colossal, which we've been waiting to see this entire season, and the strife that it takes to get him to go colossal. And then will Mikasa kill Eren has been teed up throughout the season, which finally forces her character to grow in the most tragic ways, along with the reveal bits of the Hallucianja's powers, the Rumbling Titans' powers with summoning old Titans. And then again, I keep mentioning this, the Eren Armin scene that reveals his role in killing his mom, and somehow it feels less overdone in the anime than the manga. Same with the Ymir mindset twist and the end of Titans. I think, again, because the anime does not try to justify Eren's actions in any way at all, it doesn't. So then the ending, which is the humans are still humans, and, quote, time was maybe bought, but our cycle of violence really isn't going to stop. It's depressing, but it feels earned and not an undercut. And when all of the payoffs work, that is when you break the rainbow out. So there it is. Contrast. Purple. Again, I keep rainbow very exclusively, despite what many of these tenets seem like. Because for contrast, I think we're trying to get to that which can symmetrically connect us rather than divide us. Contrast, I wouldn't say is as strong as local symmetries, even though we have a higher contrast to think of than before, which is Eldia versus Marley, and then Eren versus Zeke. And then once Eren goes all the way, the contrast is between our alliance and what the extensions of Eren are, which first are Flock and the Jaegerists, and then the Rumbling itself. All of which is wholly excellent, especially because who feels in the right as to whom we should be rooting for shifts over and over and over again. Local symmetries, I think, reaches a higher level, because taking our villains from before and making them into symmetries instead of a contrast feels way more ambitious and successful than just highlighting the contrast between us, which plenty of narratives have done. But this tenet remains extremely satisfying, especially since we're seeing what kind of future these contrasts pushed to the fullest extreme can do. And again, like I said in Deep Interlock, the fact that the finale does not hold back, and showing that, like when Flock, and he dies for real, says, "Don't stop it, the devils are our only hope." Yeah, because the cycle of violence will come at you unless you do something horrible, and it makes you think on that, even though then Armin is used to contrast both Zeke and Eren, kind of, as the would-be hidden secret balanced third option to think of in humanity to avoid all of this. So yeah, purple. And same with Greater Variation. Purple. This is similar to contrast, but on the character level, there's much more of it compared to the first 3 seasons. Armin gets almost as much character growth in this season as he did in the first 3. Because he goes from the sort of tepid soldier being forced to kill people, constantly questioning whether he's good enough versus should he have been resurrected. And even so, he still is trying to maintain himself. We have to talk this through. Let's not kill. And then you see him embrace his leadership in the finale and his pain of seeing what's happening to the world. And then at the end, when he culminates this arc, standing up to the Marleyans at the very end after the climax is seen as a parallel to season 1, episode 10. So it shows that there's Armin's arc. Look at it. And unlike seasons 1 to 3, I wouldn't say it's just Armin. Mikasa gets way more tragic aspects to chew on once Eren turns on them. Jean and Connie are forced to grapple with Sasha's death, as well as confronting their original dreams and forced to give them up for the greater good. Whilst we get to see the graded variation of our would-be villains and how they changed as well, whilst watching our would-be hero gradually shift towards evil. And this extreme effect on the world is total. I thought how the finale moved chapter 134 of the manga to after the final battle starts, which I thought was well done, because we get to see the allies arrive to fight Eren, and gets us feel, rah, rah, let's go. And then we're forced to watch that, with every moment they're fighting, more people across the world are being murdered. And it pulls it back around to making you feel what's, really going on. And heck, we talk about greater variation in the world. Just having the time skip allows us to see the discrepancy of industrial progress across the different areas of the world, and seeing how these nations evolve over the years, for better or worse, before we start to watch the dominoes fall. The only reason this is a purple and not a rainbow is that while these characters are great in this season, I still wouldn't necessarily say they are the greatest characters ever put to page, outside of maybe Eren and the villain. The rest of the characters are expert representations of those character archetypes, and this tenet is super strong, and the graded variation across the reveals of the past, the use of the paths, the Eren's mind, which, as I said before, the finale adds to instead of taking away. It's all spectacular. But Rainbow basically has to not just be perfect, but leagues better than anything else I've seen, and I'm not going that far to this one yet. So, purple. Roughness, also purple. And similar to what I spoke about on graded variation, roughness is better here than in the first 3 seasons, with those whose perceptions we have pegged go through more changes and show more rougher edges. The aforementioned Marleyans, obviously Eren, Zeke, of course, and even, smaller characters that we really thought we had pegged, like Grisha, who, as Zeke thought, we thought was the villain who started this story, if you will, only to realize that he's a pawn in the game and was actually a good guy, all things considered, in the end. So, just like the first 3 seasons, the societal roughness is there. We see the edges of the world, but what sets this season apart from seasons 1, 2, 3 is, I would say, there is more representations of character roughness, and for that, purple. Echoes. Say hello to the friend of this season again, because we are going rainbow once again. Because of how all the different characters and moments represent the different aspects that's philosophically being discussed by this show. This season represents the need for us to come together. Zeke represents the desire to let it all go, even if bad comes along the way, to us. Eren is the desire to fight, but pushed to the most horrific way that we can go. And I said before, like, this is where you see all the colossals and all the carnage that happens in the later half of the show as an extension of Eren, which is then a extension of this idea. And other characters, Armin, that hidden center, the mediator, the we need to talk this through idea. Flock as shows on the ground what it looks like to be a true believer and justifier of why one would support Eren's actions. Gabby and Falco are the next generation, and showing that even as the world takes things away, takes our innocence away, which is represented by Sasha, you can still find a way. You can still find a way to try to come together and try. And same with Reiner. Reiner, that's why I don't take points away from the show for giving Reiner so much plot armor, because Reiner wants to die, but the show won't let him. And as the series goes on, he finds the will to keep going, keep fighting for what he cares about. And it's the thing, every character that you think of kind of can be an echo for some different idea that's being discussed behind the margins of the show. Even the music does that, because there's so many musical callbacks in season 4. The fact that XLTT repeats in the Shiganshina fight, bringing Titans back to where they originally were, showing how this cycle repeats ourselves. The barricades repeats when the scouts fight the pure Titans one last time. Like, this is the last moment when all these characters are on the same side, because now it's all gonna come apart. Attack Titan, which is reused in the end of season 4 part 2. When it was first used in season 3, it was heroic, but now it's been perverted into something terrifying. Buklotsa is a true echo, because when it was first played in season 1, that's when Eren, I choose you, I choose to fight with my teammates. And now it returns again, showing what does it really mean to fight for your teammates. Watch Hanji's death scene, that's what it means to fight for your teammates. Dying Hero, or not Dying Hero, Guilty Hero, which plays when Armin is crying, knowing that the world is being destroyed as he's trapped in the past, is a foreshadowing of him and Zeke coming together, because Guilty Hero was first played during Zeke's backstory. Or the fact that Erwin's charge theme is replayed as a refrain. It's not the direct theme, but it's replayed as a refrain when Armin and Eren come together in the path scene. So both of the sort of Armin is linked to like the different would-be center ideas is supported by the music. Like, I could go on for all of like the high-level moments and all the little moments and how it supports these echoes, but that's why the color is there. Rainbow. Void. Purple. And remember, the sense of true doom that we know as the audience watching the show, we still remember it from the earlier seasons, so that's the earlier seasons' work. And I am tempted to give season 4 Rainbow, because on some level it's inverted, especially chapter 131 is an inversion of the pilot. It's a completely different Void from seasons 1 to 3. It's not our main character being traumatized, it's our main character then projecting out that trauma to, I wouldn't say traumatize everyone else because he's murdering everyone else, but when we say it's just as visceral, actually it is. And that sense of void, which our characters are trying to stop initially, but then it comes to fruition, that could be all rainbow levels of stuff. The only reason one of the reasons that I hesitate to give a rainbow is because once the Alliance gets to Eren, you do feel like they will win, and none of our Alliance characters, once they get to Eren, die. On some level, you think they're going to when Jean and Connie and Gabby are turned into Titans, but it's the one, like I said, I forgave the show for giving Reiner plot armor, but on some level, our main characters there in the final battle have a little bit of plot armor. And for this show that is so brutally realistic, it's the one place where I would say plot armor. Is the ending still satisfying for stopping the void? Yes, it is. And purple is still spectacular, but since rainbow has to be perfect, and seasons 1 through 3 I thought was perfect, for this, purple. Intercom is also purple, and I think it's just as good as seasons 1 to 3. The pacing, the reveals of Eren's mind, the reveals of the magic system, the early bits are a bit of an information overload, but ultimately that high information overload ends up being unpacked in later episodes. It's almost somewhat of a red herring by... we have the Marley assault in season 4, episodes 6 through 8, and then reveals a bunch of information in that initial flashback, but then shows us that, oh, actually we don't have all the pieces, and then it makes you unpack that. And then even the episodes before part 3 that slow down the pace, they reveal character, they reveal the Alliance's plan, they allow the tension of the rumbling to build, and then the payoffs in the finale feel genuine. So purple, go for it. Not separateness, final tenet, is also purple. Not rainbow, not the greatest I've ever seen, but given how separate our characters are this season, but also how connected they are, feels justified. Because that connection literally is represented by the paths, but there's also the not separateness literally, but not really thematic aspects. Marley and Eldia are separated. Eren and his friends are separated. Gabby and Falco are then separated from the rest of Marley. Sasha is killed and thus separated from our silver trio of John and Connie, and also separated from her family and the girl Kaya that she saved. But her essence lives on. Zeke and Eren are then kept separate, and it's all about them getting back together and what that means. And that all of this is about how we are not as separate as we think. There's more that links us than divides us. There's more we have in common that we don't. But if we ignore that and allow hate and rage to fester, then there is no escape. I love that at the end of season 4, part 2, it ends with a Colossal stepping on the camera, which is how the rumbling opening ends for the entire of season 4, part 2, almost showing that, because we've watched that from a distance in the opening throughout the season, and then when Eren repeats his phrase, I'll kill them all, and then the Colossal Titan steps on the camera, it's basically asking the audience, so how are you complicit? How are you complicit in all of this? And I love that. I think that's brilliant. And even in the finale, the not separateness of getting to Eren, and then that all the cut Titans are connected, and by Zeke and Armin realizing this idea that there's more that connects us, more to live for, that activates them, and that is a reason to keep going. But at the same time, we as humanity cannot separate from our need to destroy, and that's what the post-credit scene is there for, and it feels earned. So, is it the greatest thing I've ever seen on this tenet? It's up there, and that's why it's a purple. But I've already given out 4 rainbows now. That's good enough, and purple here for this tenet feels justified. So there we go. We have levels of scale. Purple, strong centers, rainbow, boundaries, blue, alternating repetition, blue, positive space, purple, good shape, purple, local symmetries, rainbow, deep interlock, rainbow, contrast, purple, graded variation, purple, roughness, purple, echoes, rainbow, void, purple, intercom, purple, not separateness, purple. And overall, for Attack on Titan, Season 4, all parts, overall ranking of high purple. And it is very possible that this will be the highest ranking I'll ever give out on this channel. Because high purple basically means that it is a split between rainbow and purple. And to get a full rainbow, you basically need to sweep all the categories. And maybe I'll review Lord of the Rings later directly, and I would give out rainbows for that series as well, but even that will probably only get rainbows for 4 or 5 tenets, just like this one. So it stands to reason that this is the highest overall ranking I'll ever give out. And that's including the finale. Initially, I was going to separate them out because I felt the finale of the manga undercut some of this work. But the changes to the Eren Armin scene and focusing more on making all the characters and humanity complicit in all of this, and not trying to justify what's happening in any way, it adds to what happens at the end, both literally and in the post-credits, instead of taking it away, as well as adding to Eren's characterization as well. And Lord of the Rings is still probably the greatest set of hopeful/optimistic media ever made for me, but Attack on Titan Season 4 is probably the greatest set of nihilistic/pessimistic media ever made for me. And that is why I did Dragon Prince first, which has its rougher, expansive set beyond the clean first 3 seasons be a step down from the first set. But AOT is the example in which the rougher post-conclusion set improves on an already spectacular original in almost every way possible. And as the dominoes fall and all the payoffs happen towards the end, you just feel the care and effort built into this show. And I've seen some people argue that maybe that structure in the show is too perfect on some level, but I would disagree with that, because I'd say that this show is very structured, and it does feel like all the dominoes have been carefully placed to give us those payoffs towards the end, but the gratifying payoffs are felt for a reason, and you remember this show after you finish watching it. And I think the fans and the experience of being with the show for all the years that it's been on the air, for better or worse, given what the show is trying to tell us, it will stay with us for a really long time. That concludes my review, because I'm not doing memories for this. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do next. Initially was going to do Miyazaki, but now I hear word that Boy and the Heron is actually not his last movie, so I may do other stuff. I may do Avatar when the live action comes out. I may do some Oscar movies, but it was these Attack on Titan reviews that I really wanted to get out sooner rather than later. And I hope you enjoyed watching them as much as I enjoyed making them. If you haven't watched the show and watched this review for some reason, I don't know why that would happen, but if that is the case, do watch it. It is worth it. Both the dub and the sub. Thank you for watching. Cheers.